Hello, Bloodstream listeners. You're back with your girl Hannah for another segment of Gene Therapy, a whole new world. Last week, we had the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Mark Kay and genetic counselor Kaylee Dollarshell about how the history of gene therapy and the exciting advancements that have brought not just the bleeding disorders community, but many rare diseases closer to life-changing treatments. Today, we have the absolute honor of welcoming Brendan Hayes, the Senior Director of Education Innovative Therapies from the National Bleeding Disorders Foundation. Brendan is a powerhouse of knowledge, leading the charge in educating and guiding change in the community. And on a personal note, I have to say, Brendan is one of my most cherished mentors. Brendan is here to help us unpack the current landscape of gene therapy for hemophilia and what the community is saying about it. But before we dive in, it's a whole new world gene therapy segment brought to you by CSL Behring and their hemophilia B gene therapy treatment. To learn more about gene therapy, hear patient stories, and view additional resources, visit beyondhemb.com or download B Support wherever you get your apps for more information and to manage your treatment journey. Brendan, it is always a pleasure to chat with you. Let's start with something that's been coming up more and more in community discussions. There's been talk in the media that interest in gene therapy within hemophilia community might not be as high as expected. From your perspective, what are you hearing? Are people excited, hesitant?
It's an interesting question. I think it's timely, and I think there are a variety of reasons. I think that the promise of gene therapy is not the reality of gene therapy. So if we start to think about when gene therapy was first really talked about, and we really started to see some, a lot of action in that area, I think everybody really thought, this is it. This is a cure. And as time progressed, as we learned more and more through clinical trials, we realized, this really isn't a cure. This is a durable treatment option. And so I think that was something that, that was a surprise to many. I also would say that, people are still hesitant to jump into new innovation. We can't discount our community's history with the HIV crisis. It's still fresh in lots of folks' mind. And so I think there's some hesitancy there. One of the things that I think is so cool about my job is I get to talk to people who've had gene therapy, right? I get to pick their brains. So cool. And I always ask why, why did you do gene therapy? And the answers I get are pretty varied, but it's really cool when I hear them say, you know what, this community's done a lot for me and I want to give back. And this is my opportunity to really think about, impacting research and future generations. And so I felt like this was something I wanted to do. There's still a lot of area for improvement in terms of quality of life. And ultimately, I think that's the promise of gene therapy, right?
Wow, that really is interesting. It sounds like there's such a mix of perspectives, which makes sense for such a big decision. Now, when we talk about treatment options, gene therapy is just one piece of a much larger landscape. Why is that so important to continue to expanding options, including gene therapy for people with hemophilia?
In terms of demand, gene therapy is not indicated for everybody. So I think that was another thing that was a bit of a surprise. It's not indicated for a pediatric population. So you have to be 18 or older. So that knocks out a ton of the community, right? You also have to be healthy, meaning, you can't really have any liver disease or comorbidities. So that was something too that, again, fewer and fewer people can do it. There are just all of these things that we didn't really understand in the beginning when everybody was getting so fired up about gene therapy. And as time progressed, we learned more. And then I also think that there's still a lot of, mystery around gene therapy. I'll say mystery, meaning that there are so many unknowns. And there are things that we don't even know that we don't know about gene therapy. And so, we're thinking about bleeding disorders in this conversation, but, I think the rare disease community as a whole is benefiting from the work that has been done in our community. And so the learnings will be used in other rare diseases in hopes that we will find treatment options, cures for some of those as well.
I love that point. Having choices means people can find what works best for them. And speaking of the bigger picture, innovation in hemophilia treatments has come a long way, but there's always more on the horizon. From your perspective, why is it critical to keep pushing gene therapy forward in the hemophilia space?
I really do think it's for patients. We do have some pretty great treatment options compared to what we saw 10 years ago. So we see how innovation is making the lives of people with bleeding disorders better. If you look at what's currently approved, if you look at what's in the pipeline, it is amazing. If you take a step back, I am a mom of 2 adult sons with severe hemophilia, and they don't live with me. They have their own lives, but that doesn't mean that I don't worry about them. And if I think about the amount of mental energy that patients and their caregivers are, struggling with on a daily basis. I mean, to have a product that you didn't have to worry for some long period of time, you didn't have to worry about bleeding and spontaneous bleeding, all of those things. I think that is one thing that's cool about gene therapy. When it works, you don't have to worry about spontaneous bleeding for a period of time. And that is really life-changing.
It's exciting to think about where we could be in the next few years. But of course, advancements only matter if they align with what the community actually wants and needs. With all the conversations you are having, what are you hearing directly from the community? What are the biggest hopes or concerns about gene therapy?
I think it's intriguing to think about, well, there might be a particular time in my life that might be better suited to me doing gene therapy. Maybe I want to do more, kind of athletic pursuits. Maybe I want to be super healthy when my kids are teenagers so I can, really enjoy them and be very active with them. I spoke to a couple of folks who had gene therapy and they didn't have a great response, but they were thrilled because they didn't have to worry about spontaneous bleeds and they weren't super active. So it was life-changing for them because again, they didn't have to think about, hemophilia all day long. So there's all kinds of different perspectives.
I always love and cherish your perspective on things, and I love how tapped in you are with the people in the community and how they are really feeling. I know you have an exciting session coming up at BDC. Can you tell us a little bit more about your upcoming candid conversations and what you're hoping to accomplish there?
We have this session called Candid Conversations, and it all started, back 6-7 years ago when we started thinking about gene therapy and how are people going to feel like they kind of have to do it. If you have this thing that's going to be curative, am I going to be pressured to do it? And so we really wanted to explore that. So we've done a variety of things over the years with this session. So what we're doing this year is, I kind of sat back and thought, gene therapy, where are we really today? We're seeing situations where pharmaceutical companies are discontinuing use of gene therapies. What does that mean? It's the same kind of conversation. What does this mean for our community? So it's all about innovation. Where are we going? And should we still expect to see innovation? So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. We're going to learn more in that session about some of these, early stage trial treatment options. I think it's going to be really cool.
Brendan, this has been just such a great conversation. For anyone listening who's curious about gene therapy but unsure where to start, what advice would you give them?
I think that gene therapy In reality, all treatments, it's not something to be entered into lightly. I think you really need to think about your values, what's important to you. Um, you know, really think about what you want to be doing in your life. So it's really important for people to do their research and to talk to their providers and to really think about what's important and what do they value and what do they need to have a great quality of life. Because that's at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about.
Gosh, I always appreciate your insight and the way you break things down in a way that really resonates with the community. Thank you, Brendan, so much for joining us today. And to our listeners out there, whether you're feeling excited about gene therapy, still weighing your options, or just here to learn, these conversations are all about keeping you informed. Next time on Gene Therapy, A Whole New World, we're diving into the latest data on hemogenics, the first gene therapy for hemophilia B. 4 years post-infusion, the results are in. So, what do they mean for patients, providers, and the healthcare system as a whole? We'll be sitting down with experts to unpack the findings, discuss their significance, and explore how long-term data is shaping the future of gene therapy. You sure won't want to miss this one, so be sure to join us on next episode. Until then, Bloodstream listeners, take care.